All right. Hey, everyone. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining from. My name is Sarah Irwin. I am the founder and CEO of ITGC, Irish Tech General Counsel. We are a global community for in-house legal professionals, so lawyers and legal ops and paralegals, and anyone else who is interested in building and running a lean but mighty legal function. That brings me on very nicely to the purpose of today's webinar, a subject that is very close to my heart because in my last role when I was in-house as a GC and first legal hire, I very enthusiastically and successfully ran a lean but mighty legal function. I did this in a number of different ways that we will get to as we work through the webinar, but I am really excited to introduce Donna Scaffidi, who is Head of Legal Innovation at Ruli AI, mega cool legal AI scaling company based out of San Francisco. And we have Lori Meininger as well, who is actually living and breathing the realities of doing this. She is VP of Legal at Matic. I will let them both do a little introduction themselves when I hand over in just a moment. But just to let you know, we're in webinar mode. Sometimes I run these in meeting mode if we're doing a workshop, but today it's webinar. So there is a Q&A function. If you want to drop any questions into that or have any as you go along, I'm going to be actively keeping an eye out. We've got a couple of polls to keep you engaged and awake if it's coming towards the end of the day. But otherwise, sit back, grab your coffee if it's the morning. Hopefully, you're not grabbing a coffee if it's 5 p.m. where you are, like me. And I will hand over to the wonderful Donna, who's going to lead and run this session. And I will chat to you in a little while. Cheers, Donna.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Sarah, and hello to the ITGC community. Super excited to be here. And as Sarah mentioned, my name is Donna Scaffidi, and I lead our AI and legal innovation here at Ruli AI. Before Ruli, I was sitting in a seat similar to a lot of you here. I was corporate and M&A and public companies attorney at White and Case and Gunderson Detmer. And then after that, I went in-house, leading public companies, corporate compliance, governance at First Dibs and Blend. They're both, like I mentioned, public companies, and one of which it was just the GC and myself. So also have experience living this true reality. I think for me, I understand and want to make sure that we're able to shape today's conversation around how can we make sure that we're able to do more with less, and keeping in mind, the opportunity to prove to the business that legal isn't just a cost center. And so that's what we'll be talking about today. And I'm thrilled to welcome Lori into the conversation.
Thank you. Lori Meininger, been practicing law now for, gosh, just about 22 years. Spent my entire career in primarily in-house legal and compliance roles, mostly in highly regulated industries. I've been in large organizations, and for the past 9 years, I've been in various startup organizations, and I have definitely felt the difference in those small organizations where you just don't have a lot of resources at hand. You have to do more with less. So there were some things that I had done early in my career that were not AI related, but very much translate to the AI space in terms of creating efficiencies. So really excited to be here and to talk about my experience with Ruli and my team's experience with Ruli, and hopefully we can share some benefits and how that may help you as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori. And Sarah, I know you gave a quick intro. If there's anything else that you want to say, as you have also lived and breathed this experience, want to give an opportunity for you.
Yeah, I'm just so excited to kind of just chime in. I was first legal hire. I was working at a scaling tech company. So everyone was in building mode and it just rubbed off on me. But also throughout the interview process, as soon as I was onboarded, I was lucky that the CEO who I reported to and everyone concerned was very clear that legal's goals had to be aligned with the wider business. So supporting fast revenue generation, scaling into global markets, and supporting kind of governance, being because we were based in a very sort of heavily regulated the EU, so making sure all of that was ship shape too. So for me, having that clarity, it was really key to knowing exactly where I was supposed to place resources. And yeah, excited to share a little bit more about that as we move through this.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so for as everybody could see on the call, this is a very real reality for a lot of us here. And I know when we looked at the registration data, I think almost two-thirds of folks on this call are running teams of about maybe 1 to 5 people, and the bulk being under 10 or 20, right? And so today's conversation is really going to be practical. We're going to engage in a conversation of what it's been like for us trying to build a legal function that punches above its weight. And so, and as Sarah mentioned, there's Q&A, so please feel free to jump in with questions at any time, and Sarah will flag that for us. And so I'm going to set the stage for us today and what we're going to cover. We'll talk about, here we go, four different themes and then leave you with something tangible to take away. So first, it's going to be knowing your work, right? And actually understanding what your team spends time on. The second point for today is how you shift the narrative from that cost center to being a true value driver. Third is building systems that scale and that actually scale, including how AI fits into your legal team. And then fourth is how do you invest in your people and build trust within your team? And we'll close with a quick diagnostic that you can take back to your desk later today. And for those who are at the end of your day, then you can take back to your desk tomorrow. And so first, I want to start us off with just leveling out what the legal landscape currently looks like, and we'll set that with a few numbers. So as you see, 7 in 10 GCs are planning to invest more in technology than in talent. About 60% expect AI investment to increase over the next 3 years, and about 8 in 10 in-house legal teams report that both their workload and complexity are rising at the same time. And so the work is getting harder and there's more of it. And I'm sure that sounds familiar for some folks on this call, right? And I think this is probably a great time, Sarah, if we could launch the first poll to get an understanding of what your team spends most of its time working on. And here we go. And Lori, I think this is something that you and your team thought about deeply when you were implementing or thinking about implementing a legal tech tool.
Yeah, so we'll just give you a couple of minutes on this one because the options are a bit to think about. But basically, do you know what your team even spends most of its time working on? Step in the right direction is actually getting a handle of, are you working on a bunch of like burnout work, repetitive, boring, admin, manual, anyone can do it type thing, like that should be automated and so on. Can you quantify that clearly? Do you have a general sense of it? Not really. Or do you track it, but you just, you have all the data somewhere, but you're not actually doing anything about it. So we'll just give you another half a minute or so to get all the answers in.
Totally appreciate that. And Lori, curious if you could share a little bit about where Matic sort of stood before you began using ruling, when you were sort of at that implementation or even before like that evaluation process.
Yeah, definitely. So when I joined Matic, it was myself, the only attorney, and I had one individual that reported directly to me, and she was a paralegal by trade. She eventually shifted into a compliance role, but we were doing a lot with very little, and we were spending a significant amount of time on repetitive work. It was the work that everybody complained about. It was the body of work that nobody wanted to do, and we had to talk through. There's parts of your job you're gonna love, and there's parts of your job that you're not gonna like. So as we continue to grow with the business, hired another individual who also a paralegal by trade, shifted into a compliance role, but just talked generally about how to scale in that kind of organization. And AI wasn't even on the radar at that time. It was how do we build tools for those repeat administrative tasks? How do we create spreadsheets of all of the key provisions in our contracts, and we pull them up every single time the business wants to assess a new initiative or the legal risk associated with a new initiative. So we were doing the work, but it was very, very challenging. Fast forward, that initial person who started with me, she left the organization. And at that, now I have I had three at the time, three individuals who were focused on compliance work. And she was my highest tenured individual, understood the organization, and said she was leaving to go to a different organization. So I sat down with my team and we, talked through, what are we doing that we shouldn't be doing? What are we not doing that we should be doing? So that's that whole keep, stop, start exercise. And what should we stop doing? And what I found really quickly, and it's not surprising, is that they were doing a lot of administrative tasks that were not engaging them. So we were going to hire a very low level and not low entry level compliance professional to come in and start with the administrative work and then move some of the higher value work to those two individuals. And as we started to assess that strategy, I just kept thinking, gosh, if they're not engaged doing this work, how's the next person going to be engaged doing this work? So we actually shifted away from that and started to look into those tools. And prior to doing so, we had a really good understanding of what we were trying to solve for, which is surprisingly something I hear often from my peers. Their AI is on the radar, but they don't know what they need. They don't know how to use it. They're assessing tools with no strategy in mind of what those tools are to be doing.
Right.
So that's where I was like, oh my gosh, the first thing you need to do is assess that body of work so you understand what you're trying to
Totally.
solve for. So
Yeah.
that's how we got to the AI conversation.
Super helpful. And I think, Sarah, do you think that we have the polls ready that we could see?
Yeah, so let's have a look. So we have here are the results. Let me just share them. Can you see that? So basically, so what we have here, this is pretty interesting. I'm happy to report that the minority say they're too busy doing work to track the work.
Yeah.
10% people that answered. The majority sort of have a general sense but couldn't put numbers on it, which is,
Hmm.
it's not a bad place to be. That's encouraging. 25%, quarter of people at this webinar can quantify it clearly, which is impressive. And equally so the 20 another quarter we track it but don't use the data effectively. So kind of a mixed bag,
Totally.
but it does seem like this group of people are pretty data doing something with data, which is encouraging. Thanks, guys.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks everybody for participating. And I think this is really telling, right? And we're going to dig into that. Leading off of what Lori was saying, right? In order, the first place that we need to start is we need to know what our work is. Otherwise, you can't optimize what you don't see. And so this is the first step to being able to make sure that you're that mighty legal function is really understanding where your team's time is actually spent. And so the polls show us that folks seem to have a pretty decent handle on that, be it quantifiable or not yet. But that's definitely encouraging. And I think here, as we look at knowing your work, that's the question that unlocks visibility, as Lori was sharing in her experience, and Sarah, please feel free to chime in with anything from yours. That keep, stop, start framework that Lori mentioned. There are some key questions here that you can ask your team to understand and be able to start quantifying that work, right? What should we keep doing? What should we stop doing? And it's really important to have this discussion with your team, even if you're on a lean, mighty team of two folks, or even if you're by yourself, ask yourself these questions because that's going to help to inform you of where a lot of your time is being spent, and maybe where you don't want to be spending your time, right? What should we be doing that we're not, and what's challenging you right now? And so this does two things is one, it helps you get data on where your time is going. And two, it's helping to create and foster that honest communication with your team, which, as we talked about, we'll get into more detail in section 5. But that honest communication is key to understand the true value of your work.
Yeah,
And to help
oh,
build
sorry.
trust with sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, if you are a team of one, a mighty team of one, you can bring in other people to help you conduct this review, right? So anyone who is a very invested stakeholder in the business could be the person you're reporting to. It could be your finance team, head of sales, people that are working in compliance, procurement, any of the other functions that you work mega closely with, that have a vested interest in particular in legal, achieving their goals and so on, bring in other people. And the other thing I was going to say is you can build in this stop, start, continue structure into, if you do have people on your team, you can bring that into their performance reviews as well, or your sort of quarterly or monthly look back sessions. Build in a regular cadence to actually do this exercise so that it sort of becomes part of the DNA of your team on an almost day-to-day basis.
And I would just add that that conversation helps build trust with those other individuals on your team. It empowers them to really take ownership of the path forward. If they feel like they have a hand in solving for the issue, you get a greater buy-in from them, which is absolutely necessary because you could buy all the tools in the world, but if nobody uses the tool, then it's not really going to be a benefit to the organization. So empowering them to help make the decisions, identify the goals, and then have them help identify how to get there.
Yeah, and I think that that's awesome. And Sarah, also thank you for adding in how we can implement this on a regular cadence, whatever that looks like for your team, right? Because we all know that the nature of our work can shift as the demands of the business are shifting. And so having routine check-ins of implementing that keep, stop, start framework, and especially focusing on what's challenging you, is really, I think, powerful. And that's where you're going to get data on where your time is being spent, and also give your team permission to be honest about what's not working, right? And as Lori was mentioning, that second piece, that trust piece, we're definitely gonna come back to that, because it's one of those underrated things that a lean team leader can really build on. And so I think for us, as you're running your team, be it one, two, five people, you might be thinking like, I already know what we're doing because I'm doing all of it, right? I think that's a common conversation that I have, especially with solo GCs or small teams where it's probably three or less. But really want to emphasize that the exercise is still valuable because it forces you, and even the stakeholders, like Sarah mentioned, of bringing in, some of those stakeholders that work with legal, be it finance, the C-suite, sales, because you're going to be able to see the patterns from there, where that repetition is, where are you answering those same questions over and over, maybe the third time this week, and that's where your leverage is.
Yeah, and Donna, just to double click on that point, when you're a team of one, it's very obvious to you what you're working on because you're working on it. Even a team of two, that doesn't require too much extra work to have someone copied in, expanding a private Slack group or on an email. But it's when it gets to three, even if you're still under five people, but more than two, it can then get very tricky. There are the kind of unknowns and the gaps about who's working on what really compound after sort of two people, I found in my experience.
Yeah, and
Totally.
I would say even with a team of one, you should do the keep, stop, start exercise just because there could be work that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing that you might be able to solve for, even if you don't have a technology tool in place, which will free you up to work on higher value work and add more of a benefit and be higher valued by your organization.
Definitely. And I thank you both for that. And so then as we're thinking about, okay, now we're understanding where the team's working, where and getting data behind that. The next point that we want to focus on is how to drive legal from that cost center paradigm to being a true value driver, right? Because we know that legal is not a cost center. Those of us working in the legal function, we're adding a lot of value to the business, right? But we have to actively reframe that narrative and be able to support that, right? Show the evidence. And I think both Lori and Sarah, one of the things that we've talked about, that every lean legal team leader deals with is that cost center perception. Legal is often seen as that overhead. And so how do you start shifting that narrative?
By showing your value.
Yes.
When I was first legal hire, I had people assume, they said to me like, what, why are you here? Like, what are you doing here? They were terrified that I'd been hired because there was a big reduction in force about to happen, or I can only assume they thought, I don't know, maybe they thought I don't know what they thought I was there to do, but I immediately started turning NDAs within minutes, because they were that just, it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to be working on, but it was easy to just show how fast the function was as opposed to slow, prioritizing the right thing. So again, in the context of, a classic scaling SaaS business, each quarter prioritizing those deals, imposing myself in like sales forecasting calls and stuff like that, showing value in that way. So there are quick wins and then there are longer term strategies that you can work on, but it's really everything you do should be trying to disabuse people of these negative preconceptions they have of legal. Move fast if you can, make things, all your conversations and touch points, make those simple and less complex and long and convoluted than they need to be. Lead with the business answers, and that kind of thing. show your personality, work on your internal personal brand, engage in banter in Slack or whatever your intranet is. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think this is, I don't want to, let me just acknowledge that this is not easy. In every organization I have worked for, the legal team, one of the problems they were trying to solve is the way they show their value. And over time, what I've learned myself, and Sarah, you kind of, you touched on this as well, the business isn't thinking like a lawyer. And so you have to help explain that value. And it's not like, what do you mean, what is the value? I just got your contract executed. It's like you said, Sarah, I got it executed within an SLA that you agreed upon. Was able to get this pushed to market far faster than you would have otherwise been able to push this to market. We were able to mitigate these risks. And so start talking from the perspective of how do I help show that value to those business partners? What does a good attorney look like? What does a good legal department look like?
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. And what I'm hearing from both of you is really speaking the business language, right? Not the legal language. And so, and this is something that I think about a lot. And did when I was on, when you're on a lean team, you're constantly in the mode of proving value, right? And I think you're both highlighting the way that you can prove that value is by making the invisible visible, right? By quantifying the work, showing the business what legal actually does. Again, not in legal terms, but in business terms, right? Or you talked about the SLA, Sarah, you're turning things over in minutes, right? And that's something that the business can get behind and understand. Another couple of other ways that you can sort of show the receipts, show the evidence for your business team and for your stakeholders with this and help to shift that narrative. How many contracts did we turn around this quarter, right? How much outside counsel spend did we avoid? What risks were we able to catch early, even maybe proactively? And so when you can show that evidence, I think the cost center conversation starts to disappear.
Yeah, so that's where data and tracking, managing, analyzing, presenting data, that piece becomes so important because it's the love language of the business, right? Data and numbers. This is why, finance just completed their rebrand as a value driver, business enabler. Legal is that we're the last ones. We're doing it, but we are the
Yes.
last ones. And part of impressing people with your business acumen and showing your value is literally showing it through data, which everyone understands and computes far easier than, kind of reading a big long email. They just, the data visualization is so compelling in telling whatever story it is you're trying to tell, how well you're doing, where you're not doing so great, and why you need more resources in, for something. Yeah.
And find those
Exactly.
numbers. Anywhere you can find a number because that is what speaks to the business. So you saved X amount on outside counsel because you've automated processes internally or you leveraged an AI tool. What is that number? What did somebody complain or submitted a complaint and the complaint they wanted a remediation of $4,000 and you were able to leverage an AI tool to help you frame a response that mitigated those damages. And so start calculating those savings. Those numbers are really, really important to show value.
Totally. And I think to echo on this, I'd love to get a pulse from the audience now. So Sarah, I think the second poll would be great to launch. And as Sarah's getting that ready, it's just going to focus on what we're talking about here and understanding what's the biggest barrier right now for your team to provide or to show legal's value at your organization.
Yeah, and just before we launch that, Donna, we have a question from the audience. You need to have systems to track the data. Yeah, very true. What are the best tools that an in-house legal team should invest in or use to show the value of legal to the business? And I love that question so much because it's not asking what are the best tools to use to perform, something, a sort of a niche technical legal function. It's literally what are the best tools to show value to the business.
Yeah, I think that's a
And,
great question.
and
And
in terms of tools, it's not always a tool. It can be a tool. Many of the tools offer tracking technology, metrics technology that will help you frame that conversation. But the legal spend, outside counsel spend, is not a technical tool. The amount that we saved on a complaint was simply logging all of the remediation requests and the amounts paid out in a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. So there are ways to get there, but once you identify that way to get there, you're better able to identify technology that might help you solve some of the administrative work that goes into prepping those tools or
Yeah, so
resources.
if I'm hearing correctly, we're saying one, start with the tools that you're already using in legal because a lot of the legal tech tools that you're using, like Ruli, for instance, we have a usage dashboard that will show you how much outside counsel, how much you would have spent on outside counsel for the inquiries that you're coming to Ruli with, right? And that gives you real tangible numbers or volume of inquiries, contract use, things of that sort. And so to Lori, what I'm hearing is one, start with your legal tech tools that you already have in place. See if there's ways and if you don't see a dashboard, or just reach out to your customer success person or to the vendor to see if they have any of that information that you can start getting that data from. And then the other place is where lawyers love to live, write spreadsheets. And I think that that's a fun one to sort of think through. Okay, it's not a tool, but what do I put in the spreadsheet, right? And I think as Lori's mentioning, one of the quick and easy things that you can see is if you're getting complaints, litigation matters coming in, what's that initial complaint at? And then what's the end cost that you're able to settle for? If you're able to settle, calculating in any outside counsel spend.
And I would
Yeah.
also say don't lose sight of the fact that you probably have a technology organization that has a ton of tools available and they're just not being used for legal purposes. So Jira was not being used for a legal purpose. And when we came in, we started a ticket process through Jira. Every legal question in the organization, a ticket must be submitted, and all of our responses in 5 years and all of the questions for over the 5 year tenure that I have here have been documented. So very easy to go back in and just do a search on how did we enter this previously, and then evolution. And now that tool, Jira specifically, has a built-in AI assistant as well.
Yeah, and I was to Laura's point, I was literally going to say it could be that your organization has a ticketing system like Jira, which will very easily give you that data, like what you're working on, and also things like where someone's raised a ticket and months have gone on and no one's doing anything about it. What can you kill off your workload? If you're looking at tool specific, then for legal teams, there are generic, intake and matter management tools, and then legal intake and matter management tools, which would be the sort of classic, most obvious type of tool that will, you assign tasks to different team members. That will show you what you're working on, how long it took from when the kind of ticket and request was raised to when, the legal part of the matter was closed out. And then we now have things like full end-to-end CLM tools, which have insights and ways of tracking matters and what you're working on as well, and task management. And then you have AI point solutions that also incorporate insights and analytics features as well. So there's a load of them out there, Fiona. I'll type in an answer after we've done the next poll, but really, I think the short answer is if you can get your hands on something that can track what you're working on and how long you're spending working on it, classify the types of work that you're working on as well. Now, when I started as first legal hire, I didn't do any of that. I was lucky I worked at an organization that had low volume, high value deals each quarter. So it was just about manageable for me to go back through, say, 35 deals in a quarter and kind of analyze in emails how long, when was I first asked to start redlining to when we agreed execution version, how many turns in the document, percentage of those 35 deals that were on third party paper versus our own template, and stuff like that. And then just turn all that into simple pie charts and bar graphs and stuff like that. So could be that if it's manageable enough, you could get down and dirty and just kind of do it very manually in the first instance, just to kind of get comfortable with the notion of tracking and manually producing data visualization and stunning tables and stuff. I'm going to stop talking and I'll answer Fiona's question just a minute. Oh, we have another question. Oh, no, that's it. We're on the next poll.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for this question. I think it was from Fiona, you said so. And keep them coming because I think that it's adding real value, right, for everybody else on the conversation too of how do you do this, right? And I think that we have incredible panelists here who have have lived and breathed this, and Laura, you're still doing that, right? And so just to highlight the poll, second poll has gone out, and just asking what's your experience and barriers to showing legal's value? Is it that you don't have the data to quantify, or leadership doesn't understand what legal actually does on a day-to-day? Perhaps too reactive, right? And needing to get ahead to show that strategic value. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can be proactive, what tools are out there. Or maybe you're already seen as a value driver. And if so, please tell us your secret. I think that would be incredible. We can give folks maybe another ten seconds or so. And Sarah, did you say we had another question come in?
No, we just had that
Okay,
one question. I'm
perfect.
Fiona, so I'm going to answer that in just a second.
Perfect.
I think in my case, the biggest barrier to showing the legal team's value uh, was probably it was initially when they just didn't even understand what lawyers do. And to Laurie's point earlier about how people that aren't on the legal team among the wider business, they're not lawyers and they don't get your job, and nor should they. It's not their job. So that was probably the biggest thing that was the biggest barrier to me showing value at the time in my last.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely necessary for them to understand because we want them to come to us proactively to be
Yeah.
able to mitigate the risk. And if they're not coming to us because they don't know what we do or because we're not easy to work with, then we're not going to be as successful and the organization's not going to be successful.
Yeah. And folks, just if you just another request, if you didn't hear it, we're just running a poll now. If you could answer, we'd really appreciate the data. But it looks like okay, we've got about the same. I'm just gonna end that now. Share the results now. Okay,
Okay.
so
This is a fun one. So it looks like we have 57% showing that we're too reactive, right? Can't get ahead enough to show strategic value. That's the camp that I was in when I was in house, and I think like that's a hard one of like, okay, so then how can we start to be proactive? How can we shift the conversation? How can we get ahead so we can show that strategic value when we are again on a lean but mighty legal team, right? And I think part of my experience in doing this, particularly when I was on the team where it was just the GC and myself, was investing the 5 to 15 minutes a day I would set up in the morning before a lot of the inquiries came in. Thankfully, we only worked on about like 3 different time zones, right? US and then UK. And so I would just set up first 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes max of going through my emails, kind of like how Sarah was mentioning from a contract perspective and seeing, okay, when did the first request come in to when was it execution version ready? And just start tracking little by little. And investing that time early on did pay dividends. So that way, by quarter end, I had someone to show the GC, and the GC was able to go to leadership and say, hey, look what legal has done. And we're a team of two.
we just have a comment in the Q&A. Can it be all of the above? Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it absolutely can. It can be all this and more. There's,
Yes.
and it's funny, I was in Chicago a couple of weeks ago talking about innovation mindset for in-house lawyers in particular that, don't come from a STEM background where innovation kind of happens, and when I was preparing for it, I realized a lot of the barriers to being innovative, to trying new ways of doing things that are more, aligned with business goals and show your value more. They're also the barriers to being innovative are kind of the same as showing your value and burnout. They're what causes us burnout. We just
Yeah.
don't have as many resources as other teams. People misunderstand our job entirely, and so on and so forth. So sorry, Victoria. Yeah, that's a long way of saying hard yes, all of the above and more.
I think that
Totally.
too, from the reactive perspective, it's absolutely true. You can get stuck. And so how do you take small bites? Like, what is the low-hanging fruit? What can you implement that will free up a little bit of time? And then are you strategically using the time that you freed up to move the organization forward? So it's little by little. It didn't happen overnight. I started again just over 5 years ago now, and the organization looks a heck of a lot different than it did when I joined the organization. So um, it's super important to be able to do that. I'll tell you one of the ways we were spending our time. Um, we manually tracked 88, well, more than 88 data fields for each contract over 3 spreadsheets, and we had 111 contracts that we were tracking. So every time we entered into a new contract, we had to go to each sheet, enter in the key data fields that we started to research so that we could quickly reference them. That was a ton of time spent. And then we implemented an AI tool, and that freed up so much time to be able to allow us to shift away from that administrative work, and improve accuracy, to be frank, and show the value there.
Yeah, and I think one other avenue I think that folks can take to show that like where can you initially invest your time that can have some big payouts is also thinking about building documentation. Again, when I was on a lean team of two of us, the GC and myself, I didn't inherit any playbooks. I'm the second legal hire, and didn't feel like we had time for playbooks. But I was at a public company where each quarter, for instance, we're reporting out on the same thing. When you have your quarterly reports, though the SEC might change that with new semi-annual reporting, fun things to follow for U.S. capital markets. But I digress. So we're thinking about, where can you invest that time? And I think documentation is something that gets overlooked. If you're doing something that you have done or know that you're going to have to do in the future, for instance, with quarterly reporting, I knew which teams I needed to ask for information from. You can start to automate this process or at least write it down. So if anything happens to you, the organization can keep moving forward, right? Or if you wanted to hand that workload off to perhaps you're able to hire more headcount, you're able to do that. And I think that's some of the payoff of being able to, again, understand like the first question we looked at of where is your time, where is legal working, where's your time being spent, to now helping to shift that conversation and being able to quantify it.
Are we ready? Can I get rid of the poll
Oh,
result?
totally,
Yeah.
totally. Yes. Thank you. Okay. And so now we're going to go into building systems at scale, right? The answer is not more headcount. Chances are if you're here and you're on a lean but mighty legal team, there is no more headcount coming, right? And so we have to think about how do we build better systems? And AI is part of that answer, but only when it's grounded in your team's knowledge. And so we'll get into that a bit more. And think about sort of Matic's approach here. So like we've talked about knowing your work and proving your value, right? And so now we're going to talk about that systems piece. And Lori, when you started thinking about, you mentioned somebody on your team who had the longest institutional knowledge was left, right? You had to think about how do you replace that headcount, and not eliminating folks, but replacing the need for that additional headcount. Where did you start with that?
So that it was that assessment. It was the keep, stop, start exercise, and it was engaging the two individuals who were on my team at the time to understand the things that engaged them, the things that didn't, and helping them understand the body of work that the other individual was working on, and what would they be interested in taking on, and what would make them want to poke their eye out if they had to take it on. So some of that conversation might have happened, but there were. From those conversations, we quickly identified we are spending a lot of time on understanding our contracts. We're spending a lot of time on due diligence. So we regularly have annual due diligence because we work with insurance carriers and we work with mortgage companies, and they want to review what we're doing. We work on RFPs. And when I started, we were not even logging the questions that came in and the prior answers that were given. So we started a repository. Every question that came in and every answer that was provided was retained. And then we got better about responding, but it also, again, a lot of administrative work. It's going back to find a similar question and how do we answer that? And does this apply here? So we identified that as an issue. I was interested in legal research, didn't think I was going to find a tool that did multifunctional things. So we wanted to look at legal research, RFP, contract assessment, and then contract redlining. And we had a prioritization order, knowing that maybe there wasn't one tool that was going to solve for that. We actually obtained two tools to solve for what we were trying to solve for. And one of those tools addressed three of those. That's Ruli. So legal assistant, legal research, and then contract redlining and key terms assessments. And then in the year that we got Ruli, we had partnered with them as well to say, one of the other areas that's driving us crazy is this external monitoring, monitor the legal environment to understand how newly proposed laws were going to impact us. And Ruli was super helpful in that, and did a really or created a really monitor that helps us track those laws that would or may be applicable to the organization. So we for just the contract heat terms and the contract redlining tool, which is what we went out to look for, and then separately a RFP due diligence tool. For the first tool, we looked at 11 different vendors. We demoed 3 vendors. And again, the ultimate selection came down to somebody who was going to work with us, who had an appetite, who understood the environment we were working in. And we selected Ruli because it could offer those 3 things. And we selected a different tool for due diligence. I think it's important to stress one tool might not solve all of the issues. And so you need to be ready to have that conversation and help your business leaders understand what you're solving for and how that is going to benefit the organization, both financially and in terms of being able to add value.
Yeah, I think that's really incredible, and sort of want to just double click on the process that you explained, right? And I think it's important to say that Lori didn't just grab the first AI tool, right? But instead you saw sort of a methodological approach to this, right? You saw that there's 11 potential tools that you wanted to evaluate that could solve the issues that you did from the stop start what is it, keep exercise, right? And having data there to be able to say that this is where our value needs to lie. And then sort of like ruthlessly prioritize what that looks like. And instead of adopting everything, you were really intentional about what you adopted and why. And I think
Yep.
that's a really great way to approach, especially when there's a lot of different legal tech and legal AI out there right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just answering a question, and I hope I'm not repeating any points here, but it was just to reassure you if you're on a tiny but mighty legal team and you're not a legal ops professional, you too can, I promise you, conduct a thorough procurement process, a thorough RFP. You can take your time and explore the market by yourself and find the right tools, provided that you do give yourself the grace and time to sort of do that properly. Carve out time, maybe even 20 minutes once a week to just analyze where you're at in the process, keep in touch with your vendors. Use the vendors. That's what they're there for, to help educate you on what they do, what your pain points are. It's not always easy to articulate those, right? As you know, I'm sure we're all very self-aware, but it can be hard to sort of nail exactly specifically what the issue is that you then need a solution to, or that you need to replace with some automation or AI. Vendors are experts at that. Talk to them, ask them questions, get them to help you with that. But yeah, so my point there was just that you don't need to be a team of 50 in-house lawyers with legal ops support and all sorts to successfully find and roll out the right legal tech tools for you.
Sarah, Donna, the one thing I will say is that 12 months ago, I was an AI skeptic. I was scared of AI. I was scared of hallucinations. I was like, no way. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't want my team to get stressed out about being replaced. And I would be interested to know how many people on the call actually use AI in their personal life, because that's how I got comfortable. I started to play around on ChatGPT with everyday things. Help me build a workout plan. Help me build a meal plan. What am I trying to solve for? I'm going on vacation. Help me build an itinerary. And I started to see the value that those tools could add. And I also started to see um, how prompting impacts the result. And so I would encourage each of you, if you're not using AI today, maybe just dip your toes in the water and try to use it for a personal use case so you can start to familiarize yourself with that. I was mostly concerned, to be honest with you, about being left behind. I was hearing it all the time. I was watching the other parts of the organization venture into AI. I was hearing on these calls like, oh my gosh, all these other attorneys are doing this, and I'm going to go interview and I'm not going to be able to speak to this. And how do I build a team that is uh, good at this? And so that's where I started to shift the mentality. And then again with the team, it's really about empowering them and helping them understand that it's not about replacing you, it's about evolution, and you're going to add more value if you're working on higher value things.
And thanks for sharing that, Lori. I don't know if folks want to just like do a raise hands. We don't have a poll for this, but if you are maybe skeptical of AI, that I think that could be helpful for us, and we can talk about that. Or if you have any questions or want to learn more, I mean, we can dig into that. And I Let's see. And I think there's something that Lori, that you talked about when it comes to adopting, right? To adopting AI personally and professionally, that there's sort of a disciplined approach that you took, and that's what scaling actually looks like, right? It's not adopting everything all at once, but being intentional about what you adopt and why.
I
And I
just I quickly spun up a poll, so I'm going to run
Oh,
it very quickly now, just on AI use.
incredible. Yeah, let's do
So
it.
what I've asked is, how often do you use AI in your legal work? So this is in your job, right? So all day, every day, fairly regularly, maybe once a day, once or twice a day, or not at all.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for creating that so quickly. And I think we can give folks maybe like thirty seconds to
Yeah.
sort of do that.
I know we have a little bit more to get through.
Yeah, no worries. If there's additional questions or information that folks want to know, I'm happy to stay on extra, or we can chat offline too.
Okay, we'll just quickly share the results there from the people that answered. So yeah, so fairly regularly, and then all day, every day, maybe once a day, and three people not at all. So that's encouraging. That's
Yeah, that
yeah, most people fairly regularly or all day, every day.
totally.
I'll share with the team how my usage metrics for Ruli. So the total hours that I saved, I've been using this since June of last year, is estimated to be 2338 hours, so 2,338 hours. The total spend saved across my team is $1,169,000. It's a significant amount of money. It's a significant number of hours. And if we had to do that work manually, not with a tool, we would be what, I don't know, 2338 is probably about 6 months from now. We would have implemented what we have implemented. So it's telling and it's very helpful.
Yeah, I think those are really powerful numbers, and thanks for sharing that, Lori. And I think as we're talking through, what does it look like to be on a lean team, and still be mighty, right? And show leverage to the business and be that value add, and then also need to or feel, that you're in a place of evaluating your legal tech or your AI tools. I have found when I'm working with legal teams that the best way to do this is through a framework, right? And I think that there's sort of four pillars, as we think about how do you scale that? How do you scale a mighty lean team? And I think the first is codifying your judgment. And I'm going to close the poll, actually, if that's okay. I don't know if folks see that on my screen. One is codifying your judgment, right? It's writing down your playbooks, your positions, your risk tolerance. It's taking that time that Lori and Sarah talked about earlier and investing in understanding where is your knowledge, where is your information, where does that live? And if you don't have it, just take, as you're going through something, try to start documenting that. And then the second, that's sort of where your scale of review can happen, right? You're not just reviewing every contract from scratch. Instead, you're able to now say, hey, this is our precedent, this is our templates that we like to use. And then third is building that institutional memory, right? A system that truly understands your team's decisions and context, because what Lori and her Matic team need and decide on might be very different than what Sarah and her early scale up were looking at, even for the same vendor contract, right? And fourth is that regulatory intelligence. And that's one of the ways that you can start to get ahead of the curve and be more proactive than reactive, right? If you're able to understand what does the business do, where is legal sort of a touch point in those business regulatory issues, and then just put a report out, like a monitor report, or find a tool like Ruli has, and that Lori talked about. You can just put in what you want to monitor, and we will monitor all your regulatory changes for that topic and tie it directly into your company's policies, the business, and then you have actionable steps that you can take if needed for the business. And I think like this is really important, as you're evaluating the framework, not only for lean legal team but also for tools that can help you. And something that I think both of you highlighted earlier is when we talk about tools, the the need for specificity here because I think a lot of legal teams, you're already using different tools. It's not maybe the same legal tech tagline that you were seeing nowadays, but maybe you have a CLM or a matter management system, or a Jira, Slack, right? Some of those shared Google Drives. Those are sort of those standard tools. And so I think the question that we really want to focus on here is how do those tools connect to your AI? So that way your AI and legal tech isn't living in silo, but instead you're able to show legal's power across different functions, even with different tools of the business. And so, Lori, I think you talked a little bit about when we were prepping for this, that the power that you're seeing with as you're when you were evaluating legal vendors and sort of like legal tech for your lean yet mighty legal team is having purpose-built legal AI versus sort of that general context. And so, can you talk to us a little bit about what that difference was for you in having a system that was able to retain that context?
Yeah. There were several things that we identified prior to starting the search that we were looking to achieve, and some of them were non-negotiable, right? They have to have a certain level of security in place. We have to be confident that they have documentation, can explain what they do. We also needed it to be intuitive because, again, I did not want to engage with a tool that we weren't going to use. That's just silly. So I think what's really, again, I'm going to repeat it a million times, that trust building with your team is super important. And I have been in this situation where you're like, I'm the GC, I'm supposed to know this, I'm supposed to do this. But you don't have to be the hero. You can leverage your team. You can help them grow. You can help them develop. You can show them the value in that. You set the strategy, and then there are a million different paths there. So my team was very, very engaged on the legal tools because they were trying to solve for the issues in each of their respective bodies of work. Those tools are split for each individual. One of the other things I will say is as you're looking at this, it's important to get the right use case, but there are so many other use cases that may be available to you. And so be understand that you're probably going to get a lot more than what you're looking for just in engaging for a certain purpose. So very, very important point because we have been able to leverage Ruli specifically for a lot of different use cases.
Yeah, and so I think for sort of for everybody on the call, right, the key takeaways that I'm getting from this section is one, you don't need to adopt 11 tools all at once, but instead you need to be intentional with what it is that you want to solve, identifying one or two of your highest priority problems, and then making sure that those tools work with your current existing systems and current workflow so you're not creating a new silo of work for you and for your team. And also that the data actually shows that legal teams are adopting AI faster than almost any other function in enterprises right now. And so I think the big question here isn't whether to use AI. And I think we see from our poll, thanks Sarah again for spinning that up, that a lot of folks are using AI right now. And that's fantastic. And so we want to make sure that you're using AI in a way that's grounded in your team's actual knowledge and judgment. I think that's where you'll be able to find the most leverage.
Donna, one of the other things that I did want to mention, though, is that Ruli was unique in that the CEO is actually an attorney by trade. And so he understands the landscape really, really well. And he's invested in helping attorneys find a tool or creating a tool that helps attorneys in their everyday work. And from an in-house usage perspective, this tool has been phenomenal. When I talked about the use cases, I will also share one other use case. I believe I'm right around $5,000 last year spent on outside counsel because of what Ruli has enabled us to do. We a lot of times attorneys are sending stuff to outside counsel because they don't have time to work on it, but one of the negatives about that is that those attorneys outside counsel doesn't understand the internal framework or risk tolerance. And so you're getting answers back, but you still have to do a lot of work when that comes in. So Ruli has also helped frame up the question that you're asking counsel, maybe do the pre-work and have them review it. instead of have them do the work from scratch and get an answer that you can't even leverage.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thanks for sharing that,
Love that.
Lori.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left just to keep checking on just the doing.
Appreciate the
Goes
time.
so
Okay, so
fast.
I know
Really
we'll whiz
does.
through this. Yes. And so the next point, and it's something that both of you touched on already, is investing in your people, right? And we know that a mighty team is built on trust and not just tools. And so we want to focus on like how do you help folks feel safe with being honest, right? And so that they can actually see their own growth as well at the company. And I'd say, Lori, during part of our one of our calls, something that you shared really stuck with me. You talked about building trust within your team so that way people can actually say what they don't like doing and what's not working. And so, can you talk to us a little bit about that and how you were able to do that as the GC?
Yes, you definitely have to create a safe space. And again, not only internally, but externally, I think there's a general perception that maybe not a general perception, maybe a concern that AI is going to replace roles. AI is going to make us work differently. And so, how do you frame for those employees the benefit that AI is going to provide them? Because my employees can go to any organization now and have a legal ops mindset and are going to immediately be looking for ways to scale within an organization. And that might make sense. In a smaller startup, we know larger organizations are a little tougher to navigate sometimes, but at least in their own roles, like I would tell you that they think very differently about their day-to-day work now. And the individual that left the organization actually thanked me and said how much she appreciated the benefit that I provided and the fact that she would have never gotten the job if she couldn't interview in the way she interviewed, which was a direct result of me saying, when you interview someday, this is going to matter. This is a skill that you're going to use in the future. So it's again building that trust and helping those individuals understand you're one team and they're not here just to do a job. What are they getting out of the experience as well?
Yeah, I think that's incredible. And what I'm hearing is, yes, we spend a lot of time talking about tools and processes and efficiencies, but at the end of the day, your mighty lean team is the people you have, right? And so if your team doesn't feel like comfortable or safe being able to tell you, hey, this process is broken, or I'm spending 3 hours of my day on something that could have already been automated, you're never going to be able to find the real leverage points. And then also you're never going to be able to I would say like pour back into them, Lori, the way that you were doing with that other team member, helping to train them up and understand what their goals are. All right, and I know we're cut for time, so I'll sort of leave you with your diagnostic takeaway, and wanting you to think through: is your team lean, or are you just stretched thin, right? And I think there's 5 questions here, and if you answer yes to, or if you answer no to more than two, it's possible that you're more so stretched thin, and there's ways that we can talk about how you can become that lean, mighty team. And so these 5 questions are an opportunity for you to be honest. You can take it back to your team and do it together. And again, the good news is that you can move from one to another. Just because you're at a yes or a no today doesn't mean that you can't change that. That's what Lori did. Sarah, I think that's what you've shared that you've done in-house too when you were leading as a GC. And that's what we've been talking about for about the past 45, 50 minutes now. And so there's your diagnostic. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. And here are some quick takeaways that you can take with you to optimize and build systems around how you actually work and to make legal the true value driver that it is for the business.
All right. Thank you so much, Donna and Laurie. That's amazing. We'll be sharing these slides. We can share these slides with the group. I will email them around to you with the recording as well. Yeah, just Donna, do you want to just quickly talk us through other stuff that you have on offer?
Yeah, so some next steps here. If you enjoyed the conversation, if there's additional questions you have, please feel free to reach out to me. Happy to answer anything, or if there's folks that I can connect you with. Lori's an incredible resource.
I'm on
So
LinkedIn and
just
available if anyone wants to reach out directly. You
there
can
we
link me.
go.
Me
I
too.
also host. Perfect. And I also host weekly office hours where we can just talk about what legal AI is looking like for you. If there's anything specific with Ruli, things of that sort. It's 2:30 3:30 ET for folks in different time zones. I have a separate like Hong Kong office hours that I do with teams of folks over there. So if
Yep.
time zones are an issue, feel free to just ping me and we can make a time that works for you.
Amazing. Yeah, so that's 9:30 Dublin and London, GMT, British summertime. Thank you so much. I mean, that was just really impressive. I learned so much from both of you, Laurie and Donna. Thank you so much, Ruli, for sponsoring this webinar. My webinars are all completely free. Thank you to my sponsors for that. So big shout out. And yeah, keep in touch. I will be emailing you all with the recording and the slides, details for Laurie on LinkedIn, and I'll include all of this as well. And just please let me know if you have any questions, or if I can help in any way, or pass on any messages to Donna or Laurie. Let me know. All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody.
evening and day. Take care. Bye.